You are attending a webinar on HCM Analytics. Retire those reports. I give you Melissa and Jackie and Aaron.
Thank you, Keith.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we're going to be talking about HCM Analytics, and there's three areas that we're going to be covering during our presentation today. Melissa's going to start off and talk about the need for better data in HR at the executive level. And then Jackie's going to talk about some of the operational day-to-day needs for that information. And then I'm going to talk about the different tools and technologies that you have at your disposal for how you can actually implement those at the different levels of your organization.
Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the strategic needs. What happened is generally what we always report on, right? It's very reactive. We see something that gives us a little bit of data, but it doesn't really write a story for us and tell us, how it got there or what we need to do to fix it or why, we're even looking at it. So, some of differentiating, reporting from analytics really is, why did something happen? When will it happen next? We want things to be predictive. We don't want errors at all, and when we want to understand good information that will help us drive our organization, we want that to be predictive, and we want it to happen at a time that we need it. The data needs to be there, updated when we need it. And how can the outcome be improved? And how can I do my job better? So these are other questions, and people are not always able to get the answer from the reporting and analytics they currently have. So, how do companies use information today? You can read some of these metrics here, but basically, a lot of people make decisions on gut reactions. It's, 58% say their companies they don't have the information to give them solid, quantifiable evidence to make decisions, so they act on the best that they can get from what they have. And a lot of that entails bringing data from multiple sources and pouring through it, and by the time the CHRO or leadership gets the data, it's already most likely at least a week old because it's had to have gone through multiple iterations to get to a view that the leadership are able to act on. So what are CHROs thinking about? So here's a litany of topics that HR deals with on a day-to-day basis. And Jackie's going to hit on those day-to-day. You're in HR. You're trying to understand what the issues are, where people aren't. When we talk about employee relations, how many people do we have grievances or employee relations issues about? The development side, who isn't compliant because they don't have their certifications. But when you lift it up to CHRO, they're really thinking, how am I able to see my organization as a whole and attract the talent that I need to make our organization. If you were in the last the last presentation, kind of talked about being able to differentiate yourself from your competitors. And a lot of that is being able to attract the right talent. But, you've got a job description. How do you know that what you put in that job description is really going to be successful in your organization, in your culture, in that time? We can't tell you that right now, can we? So there's other areas under compliance. You want to ensure that your organization is not out. There's a lot of regulatory issues that come through that are new that somebody has to keep an eye on. Do you know if somebody's keeping an eye on all those things, or are you not compliant? And that kind of goes around all of these areas. You as a leader are assuming that your team's got it, but you really don't have that evidence that they truly do without the right analytics and data points that you might not be able to get to. So when we talk through people analytics, here's a dashboard that Aaron's put together for CHRO, and that will show just a snapshot of what the organization looks like. I've got my workforce here where I can see how many people are active. I can see what my FTEs look like. This is going to help me make budgeting decisions. If I need to understand where there's gaps, I can only see these numbers right now, but I need to drill into these to say, is 2,700 FTE enough to meet the needs that my organization has that's drawing those people? If we're talking healthcare, that may be enough, but are they allocated around the right times of the day, the right shifts, in the right areas? That number is not going to tell me that, and that's what I would give as a report. But as an analytics, I can now drill down and start seeing where these FTEs are and help me make some decisions for different departments or different divisions that may need moving around of some of those FTE. We've got recruiting statistics, productivity statistics that can come from other systems. And really, you think about what helps you as a leader make the decisions that you need to make, see the patterns, and be able to forecast based on those patterns that you're starting to see. So with analytics, that's kind of the differentiation, why you want to retire those reports, because reports aren't getting you there, but the analytics will.
Yeah, the difference between reports and analytics is huge, right? And there's a lot of data-driven HR processes. Thank you, my hands are full now. There's a lot of HR processes and reports that are fine as lists. And if you go into the system, you pull out a list, it gives you exactly what you need. But when we talk about reports versus analytics, analytics really give you that information that's predictive, that helps you get to where the problem originated, and helps you be able to solve that problem as well. So we just have a few examples up here of some HR processes or common reports that we see in the system. There are delivered reports for, but when you have a beautiful dashboard, like some of these examples we're going to get to show you here, it makes it so much easier. It makes it easier to see where the problem is, what the problem is, the stats around that problem, and be able to get that resolution. So open enrollment status, that's one thing. GHR at least does a decent job of showing you where it is at that time. But when you apply it to these dashboards, you can see exactly where everyone is in the process. Maybe a specific department is lagging behind, or maybe a certain area or business division is.
And then maybe you can start seeing everybody starts doing their enrollment within the last 7 days, and you have a month enrollment period. Well, why do you need to do that if every year everybody does it in 7 days?
Yeah.
That will now change your enrollment period.
Performance and goal cycle status as well. We have a nice dashboard we'll show you for that. See where people are in the performance cycle, who's actually entering goals for themselves and who's tracking on those goals or maybe not. And then turnover versus retention, turnover and retention. These are huge, huge asks that we often get from clients that really want to see that turnover data, and not just, again, a list of who terminated or who started, but actually turnover data. We want to see the percentages. We want to see who's leaving and where. And
it's nuanced, right? Because sometimes it's not leaving the organization, maybe they're moving to another area, and you don't want to count it as turnover if it's a specific area, but some areas want it.
Yeah. So turnover, this is a beautiful dashboard that Erin put together for us, and turnover reports are huge. I've worked in staff augmentation roles where I've had to do these reports, and it's so time consuming. It's massive. You have to slice and dice the data yourself, put it in Excel, maybe find a pretty chart to use. Yeah. It takes a very long time, and then when you're doing your turnover projection, it's really 5 minutes. So it's so much lead up time to be able to show something like this. And what we want to do is cut back on that amount of time so that you can spin up a beautiful dashboard like this in no time and have something to show for it.
So I was going to ask, so what happens if there's all of a sudden a whole bunch of retroactive changes after you started your reporting?
That's the other thing. In my experience, at least in the way that we've had to run reports in the past, it's point in time. And if there's retros or if there's like a late acquisition or something, you don't have that data reflected here. Here, these reports you just refresh, and it's real-time data as well, which is wonderful. And we have some key metrics here at the top. Percentages. These are in-your-face, bold, big percentages and amounts that you can look at and immediately get an idea of what your report is telling you. We also have over here on the right-hand side, we have turnover by division and department, so you can easily see maybe a certain manager, a certain leader has a little bit more turnover, or maybe there's a difficult practice or business division that we want to dig into a little bit and see why there's so much turnover there, or why there's so much retention in one area. And then here's another example. This is another way to slice and dice it. We have it by cost of turnover. So how is that turnover actually affecting you with a $sign in front of it? What does it mean when somebody's leaving for your organization? What does it mean? What does it cost you? And again, division, department here, we can see which areas are costing the most when we have that kind of turnover. And another one here for employee engagement. So we talk about turnover a lot, who's leaving. Employee engagement is important too. We want to look at retention. Who's staying? Why are they staying? What departments are they staying in the most? Again, here's job family is another example of a way we can break it down. So officials and managers, professionals, sales, craft workers, maybe we want to know which manager has the most people staying and in what job family, what area. And all of these reports you can actually click on some of this data and it'll drill you down deeper into the numbers that it used to get here. And lastly, we have a dashboard that can either be used by an employee or a manager or maybe a personnel performance management administrator or goal management administrator to see how somebody's doing on their performance reviews or on their goals. So for example, here we have Adam Morton's goals. He has a couple goals up here with some goal categories or types listed, along with percent completion. And here's the employee summary view, what the employee's done in terms of their development for their work assignment, what they've done to contribute to that goal. So beautiful view for the employee, or again, up the line to their manager or any other administrator in the system to see exactly the numbers that they're hitting here for their goals.
And when I'm doing performance reviews, when I was an HR manager on the client side, they weren't fun like this. This is something that your employees will really want to go and engage with. Everybody, I don't want to say everybody hates performance appraisals. They need to be done, but they're often a chore. And they're, again, another thing that's put off until the last minute. But when you have something that's easy to just, it tells you that story really quickly of where your employee is, how they're performing and how they're affecting not just their little area, but the whole organization is really, I think it's really powerful and it would be a big driver to get that engagement and to get people to complete their appraisals in time.
It can also set you up to have some of those difficult conversations, make it a little bit easier if you have specific numbers like this to point to in terms of completion of goal or engagement on their goals. You can easily, log in, check this information out, and then be able to point to specific numbers to help those conversations flow a little bit better as well.
Cool. Well, I'm going to slide out and I'm going to bring our content expert in, and he's going to talk a little bit more about how, what comes out of the box, what do you get with GHR, and how can you put together some of these interesting and necessity or the dashboards that you really need, and how do you figure out which are the ones you really need before you bring somebody on to help you create those. So, Aaron, come on in.
To slide out too.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Melissa and Jackie. So I think that was a great overview about some of the common needs that we see for better data in HR organizations. So what I'm going to talk about is the tools that you have available to you to go and build out some of this content. So as you know, there's an entire spectrum of tools that you have available, all the way from the casual user who maybe has very limited or no interaction with the GHR system, all the way over to power users that are maybe using it every day. So you have to have a variety of tools to accommodate those different users and the different levels of interaction and the needs that they have. So there's a variety of tools you have available. Of course, there's content that's delivered right within the application. So you've got hundreds of standard reports. You've got compliance reports already done for you out of the box. And then, of course, there's list views that you can build and customize for that real-time information right within GHR. You can also embed views within Mingle, so you can take some of the analytics that you build, you can embed them in employee home pages, or one of the other things I like to point out is you can actually embed it within the ERP. So while it's great to have good data and good analytics, often you have to leave the system that you use day in and day out and go somewhere else to retrieve that information. Being able to embed these analytics directly within Mingle, you can align that ad hoc analysis tool that somebody needs during a business process and embed it directly within the ERP. So as they're going through that business process, and let's say on step 5 of 7, they need to do some ad hoc analysis to decide to make a decision, you can actually embed those tools directly within the ERP so the user never has to leave the application. And then, of course, you also have the ability to build role-based dashboards with Birst. Out of the box, you get a number of role-based views. So these are different roles for the HR organization. And it's the thing I like about the pre-built content is, I'm careful to set the expectation when I'm working with customers. It's a good start. It's not going to be everything that you're going to need. So they do give you different views of what you maybe want to include for diversity officer or compensation analyst or HR generalist, but it probably isn't going to be everything you need, but it's definitely a good start. And you can take that content and tailor it. So I've got some examples of some of that content and what it looks like. So this is a pre-built dashboard, just giving an organizational overview. They've got some important metrics up on the top left and center, and then it shows those numbers trended over time. We've also got a pre-built dashboard showing requisitions and what those look like. And then there's a lot of additional content. And so the two big pieces that you get with your content is you get a pre-built data model, which basically makes it easy to get at your GHR data. In the past, if you used legacy HR systems, you had to know SQL, you had to understand how to join tables together. The data model gets rid of all that. You're presented in business terms pieces of data that make sense, so you can put those together to quickly either do ad hoc analysis or create the reports and dashboards that you need for your role in the organization. The other part of content you get is you get pre-built reports and dashboards. And as I mentioned earlier, they're a good start, but they're certainly not going to be everything that you're going to need for your HR practice. One of the other questions we often get asked by customers as well too is Birst licensing and how that works. And so I want to take just a minute to talk about that. So all GHR customers get a version of Birst called Birst for CloudSuite. And basically what that does for you is that allows you read-only access to the content that's delivered out of the box with GHR. So you can use the data model, you can use the reports, you can use the dashboards, you can interact with them, but you can't customize them, you can't modify them, and you can't create new content. So knowing that, almost every customer we've worked with has decided to purchase Birst Enterprise. And there's two different types of licenses that you need when you're planning for your implementation. The authoring license is going to be for people that want to create analytical content and distribute it throughout the organization. So if you have traditional report writers, they would be good targets for authors. And then you've got viewers. So make sure to work with your Infor account executive to make sure you have the right licenses as part of your implementation. Up on the screen, I've got an example of a custom dashboard that we built. This data is all from GHR. We connected to the system. We used Birst Enterprise to build out and make a very visual dashboard. One of the things I like to point out about this dashboard is while it's great to have these metrics across the top and then data visualized in a number of different ways, it's not static, right? You can easily go and you can select a department, or you can select a role within the organization, or per diem employees, and it's going to filter and everything updates automatically. So in the past, to be able to do something like that, it often involves scripting or programming. So this is really a no-code interface to create dynamic dashboards like this. As far as the flow of data, I'd like to cover this because I think it's fundamental to understand how things work. So it's going to start off within Infor Global HR, and there's a technology called replication sets. And what those replication sets do is they query something called business classes, basically to get your GHR business data out of the system. That data is then sent up to the Infor Data Lake. You can think of that as your data repository in the cloud, where you put information that you want to report or perform analytics on. And then from there, that's how Birst connects to it and accesses that data to develop the dashboard and reports you need. I also like to cover this architecture diagram. I think it's important because one of the things that they've done is you can see they have a number of different spaces here, and it shows the flow from left to right. But in the middle, you'll see there's two spaces. There's a source space and an extension space. And that's important to understand because what that allows you to do is Infor as a company will continue to release updates to this content. So the current version is 11.05. And you're going to take that content and you're going to make your own extensions to it. You may extend the data model, you may extend the reports, build your own dashboards. In order to protect those from being overwritten the next time Infor pushes out a release, you need to build your content in that extension space so that it can then be merged with what Infor delivers. So it really helps to segregate your organizational customizations from the standard product that Infor is pushing out. So having worked with a number of customers on better reporting analytics, some of the areas where they've seen the most benefit, of course, is reducing ongoing maintenance. When we work with many customers, they have a number of legacy reports that are in place. And one of the examples I know that almost everybody has is the number of employee lists, right? You probably have anywhere between 37 and 72 employee lists in your organization. And what happens, because of the limitations of the technology at the time, you would develop one employee list, and then somebody else wanted an additional column, so then you had two. And then somebody else wanted it grouped differently, so then you had three, and so on and so forth. And you end up with lots of basically this very similar information. So with the technology that's available to you today, you can take all those employee lists, you can consolidate them down into a single object that you have to maintain, because the technology now is dynamic. It allows you to dynamically add and remove columns at runtime. You can change the grouping at runtime, and then you can bookmark that customization. So you're able to provide your users, as an example, with one employee list that they can take and customize to their heart's content, bookmark it for themselves, and then you still are only maintaining one object. Of course, being the holiday season, we advocate giving the gift of time. Many of the forward-thinking leaders that we've worked with recognize the amount of time and effort that goes into reporting today. There's a significant amount of time spent querying systems, getting data sets, conducting VLOOKUPs, generating different visualizations, put it into a PDF and then distributing it, and having to do that over and over again every week, every month, every quarter. So that's a great opportunity to automate those processes and give people back that time in their day so they can focus on more value-add initiatives than simply creating static reports over and over again for different stakeholders in the organization. The third point is enabling self-service, and that's really the ability for business users to get at the data they need when they need it. And that's one of the biggest points of contention in many organizations that we work with today, is that HR analysts or managers or executives just can't get the data. They can't get to it, or they can't get it in the time that they need it, so they have to go with their gut. They have to make these subjective decisions because it's difficult to access, or they get data that they maybe don't trust because it's pulled from multiple different systems. And of course, lastly, improving operational efficiencies. We want to get you the value-based design dashboards, which allow you to monitor and track business unit metrics that are important, and be able to display how you're performing, diagnose what's going on with your business unit, and then decide what you're going to do to improve performance. As far as next step, if you're interested, RPI offers 3 different pre-built plans for services for implementation. We have an enablement plan, which really helps you get the data flowing all the way from GHR into Birst, and then we give you some orientation training to the tooling that's available to you. We have the modernization, which is where we work with you to take your current report. We're going to help you inventory, organize that, and figure out how we can consolidate, automate, and take advantage of some new features. Or there's also the transformational tier, which is where you really want to drive organizational improvements and really implement some of the core tenets of becoming a data-driven organization. So please reach out to us, questions@rpic.com. We'll work with you to figure out which of those is the right fit for your organization, and then we can work to finalize that SOW and contract, and then kick off the project and begin the planning phase.